acknowledge. But we must also acknowledge that August is Black Women's Equal Pay Month. That's the point in the year that a Black woman has to work in order to make the same amount of money as her white male counterparts. What better way to show the absurdity in that disparity than to have the awesome presenters that we have here today? After today's CLE, we need 3 things from you. 1, use the link in the registration email to submit feedback and attest that you attended the CLE virtually. That way, you'll get credit with the State Bar. 2, if you're not already a member, go to www.magiccityBarAssociation.org and join today. 3, go to Facebook, like our Facebook page, and share it with your friends. Thanks for being here. Have a great day, and we'll now turn it over to our CLE presenters.
All right. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Thank you all for taking time out to join us for a discussion on the importance and role of Black women lawyers in driving diversity and equality in the legal profession. And many thanks to our president, Chris Burrell, for your leadership. Black women have a long-standing reputation for leading efforts to move the needle and make bold moves to advance the rights of not just Black people, but all marginalized and underrepresented people in workplaces and communities, even when the needle has ticked a little bit slower in our favor. Now, of course, we are in the spirit of celebrating women's suffrage, which was a monumental occasion for women and one in which Black women played a pivotal role. They marched, they rallied, they stood shoulder to shoulder on the front lines, yet Black women and men did not share in the success of those efforts until almost 50 years later. So although Black women have a long-standing history of playing pivotal roles in driving diversity and equality on many fronts, the progress and rewards are not always immediate, yet we forge on. Today we have with us 2 additional women who have taken up the mantle in their respective organizations and have served as mentors and champions in driving diversity and equality in our profession. We each reap the benefits from the blazing trails laid by women in our profession, such as on a national scale, Charlotte Ray and Kamala Harris. And locally, Judge Helen Shores Lee, Deborah Bird Walker, Gail Pugh Grattan, Levita Battle, Judge Elizabeth French, and many more. At this time, I'd like to take a moment to introduce each of the panelists. With us, we have Janine Smith. Janine is an experienced creditors' rights and bankruptcy lawyer whose practice is concentrated on the representation of creditors in consumer and commercial matters, both in bankruptcy court and state and federal court. Janine's diverse knowledge base and areas of expertise are the result of her having practiced in both law firm and in-house legal department settings. She has extensive experience representing both creditors, financial institutions, debt servicers, collection law firms, and collection agencies. Janine is a member of NACA, the National Creditors Bar Association, and an active member of the Alabama State Bar, where she serves as chair of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee, immediate past chair of the Leadership Forum Alumni Section, Class 7, and member of the Bankruptcy and Commercial Law Section. Janine is also active in the Birmingham Bar Association, where she has served on the executive committee as past chair and board member of the Women Lawyers Section, and as a member of the Bankruptcy and Commercial Law Section. Janine is a fellow of the Birmingham Bar Foundation and past chair of the Legal Aid Society of Birmingham Board of Trustees. Janine has served on the board of many civic organizations, namely Girls Inc. of Central Alabama as chair and trustee, the junior board of the YWCA, and Alabama Appleseed. Janine earned her bachelor's degree from the University of Alabama in '97 and her Juris Doctorate from the University of Alabama School of Law in 2000. Please join me in welcoming Janine.
Thank you, Ruby.
Hey, Janine.
Hi.
Next, we have Ms. Stephanie Mays. Stephanie is a shareholder and member of Maynard Cooper's labor and employment practice. She has experience defending public and private employers in litigation and federal agency proceedings and provides training, day-to-day legal advice, and pragmatic solutions that are tailored to meet her clients' needs. She also assists clients in drafting employment policies and employee handbooks and conducting internal investigations. Stephanie is recognized in the Best Lawyers in America for Litigation in Labor and Employment. Stephanie also serves as the firm's Chief Talent Officer, where she focuses on creating intentional and centralized programming around diversity and inclusion, recruitment, onboarding, training, and development. She serves on the Character and Fitness Committee for the Alabama State Bar and the Board of Trustees for the Legal Aid Society of Birmingham. She is married to Bernard Mays Jr., and they have 2 children, Savannah and Sterling. Stephanie earned her BA from Birmingham Southern College and her JD from Cumberland School of Law at Samford University. Please join me in welcoming Ms. Stephanie Mays.
Thank you, Ruby.
All right. Before we jump into the Q&A discussion, I would like to give each of you a minute to talk about your career trajectory and where you are today. Janine, can we start with you?
Sure. Thank you, Ruby, for that fabulous introduction. I'll be sure to tap you whenever I speak because you make me sound really, really good. Today, I am currently of counsel with Global Business Advisors. And Global Business Advisors consist of 2 women, a Hispanic female, and of course myself, an African-American female. Our focus there is on immigration matters, commercial litigation matters. I still have a focus on creditors' rights, financial services litigation, also commercial litigation, focusing more on real estate and probate matters, and also just general business litigation. I started my career in 2000 here in Birmingham with Burr Foreman, and I was there for 13 years where I became a partner. I practiced with the Creditors' Rights and Bankruptcy Practice Group. In 2013, I left Burr Foreman to go in-house to serve as counsel to the commercial or consumer finance group at Regions Bank. I had done some work with Regions, and they were looking for counsel to oversee their consumer collections group, specifically with the creation of the new regulatory agencies in Washington, D.C., so the CFPB. And so I went in-house with Regions and stayed there for 5 years, and I've been out back as a solo practitioner or small firm practitioner here in Birmingham for the past 2 years.
Awesome. Stephanie?
So I have been at Maynard for the past 13 years. I started my career here right out of law school in 2007. I started in our labor and employment practice group where I have been the entire time. My practice is primarily in federal court, doing federal court litigation of harassment, discrimination, those types of claims. A large part of my practice currently is conducting internal investigations where I provide clients reports and recommendations as it relates to harassment and discrimination issues in the workplace. And effective January of this year, I transitioned where part of my work is serving as our firm's chief talent officer. So a little bit more than half of my time here at the firm is spent in that capacity where I, as you mentioned, get the wonderful opportunity to help to drive our diversity and inclusion initiatives and to help with onboarding and training of our associates and laterals here at the firm.
Awesome. Okay, so we'll jump into our first question. According to a recent survey of diversity at 232 law firms by Vault and the Minority Corporate Counsel Association, women of color and Black women specifically continue to be significantly underrepresented, making up only 8.57% and 1.73% of all attorneys, respectively. How is representation reflected in your organization?
Well, that's easy for me. I guess we're hitting it out the park because we're 50. We're 100% diverse. We're 100% women, and we have one Hispanic female, as I mentioned, and one African-American female, like I stated. I'm not sure how it's reflected in other places. I can tell you when I left my previous employment, out of about 30 in-house counsel, there were 3 women of color and no men of color. And so the numbers that you mentioned seem to be on trend with what I have experienced in my career.
I think that's true. We are a firm that has about 290 lawyers, primarily in Alabama, but we have offices in other states as well. We have 11 African-American attorneys, and of those 11, 6 are men and 5 are women. We're going to balance that out in September when our fall associate class starts, and we'll have 6 African-American females and 6 African-American males. Of those women who are at the firm, 2 are associates, 2 are of counsel, and we have 1 African-American female partner, yours truly. So as Janine said, I would say our numbers are generally reflective of the small percentage of women who make up firm leadership and firm lawyers overall. And I know we'll dig a little bit deeper into how we as a profession and organization are looking to change those things.
Absolutely. So Janine, I know you mentioned that you serve as chair of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee for the State Bar. Do you have the metrics for what those demographics look like here in Alabama?
I do not. I can tell you that, so I thought about when I started practicing law and maybe how that's changed. I think, and I know Chris, you're on the call, and if someone else knows, Jennifer, I know you're on the call. I think we may make up 10% of the population of lawyers in the state. I do know that our Diversity and Inclusion Committee is very diverse, and we probably have 50% of our membership being women and men of color. I will say that when I started practicing law in 2000, there was generally 1 or 2 African-American attorneys at each of the big firms. And I think that has increased somewhat, especially by Stephanie's comments, but I'm not sure what that looks like in Birmingham. I think that part of the trend upward in terms of there being more attorneys of color has come with firms that were founded or headquartered in Birmingham, partnering with firms or opening locations outside of Birmingham. So while the increase in the number of attorneys at firms as they open up offices throughout the Southeast and in other locations has allowed them to grow their numbers, I still think there's opportunities here in Birmingham for us to grow representation of diverse attorneys, and particularly Black women of color.
Thank you for that. Stephanie, do you have any additional thoughts on whether or not the trend is moving in a positive direction, and has the representation increased since you started?
Sure, I would say so. I've been practicing for 13 years, and I do think that representation is improving, but we've got a long way to go. By way of example of improvements, when I was clerking in 2005 and 2006, I didn't see that many Black female lawyers on the bench. If we just take, for example, the Jefferson County Circuit Court and District Court judges, I count 9 Black female judges on the bench. And I don't recall having that as an example when I was coming through as a law student or a law clerk. And so I definitely see that as an example of moving in the right direction. I still talk with lots of young lawyers and Black women who are the first in their firms, who are the first Black associate in their firm, or the first Black woman to hold a position in an organization where they work. And while some of us on this Zoom gasp at that, because that's occurring in 2020, on the other hand, that's a sign of increasing the representation of diverse women who are in organizations or who are in these positions where they were previously under or not represented at all. And so I see that as a sign of improvement. And I'll say that even here at our firm, I see that there's been an increased awareness about the need for diverse representation. And I think that that is occurring not just in law firm settings, but also in organizations. So we see that both from law firms and from our clients. And I think that there is now a deeper appreciation for the sense of urgency in addressing these issues as we're talking about them today, for example. So I recognize all of those things as improvements, but I would say we still have a long way to go. The ABA recently released a report called Left Out and Left Behind. And of course I have a handy dandy copy of it. And it's left out, left behind, the hurdles, hassles, and heartbreaks of achieving long-term careers for women of color. And they released it this year, and I would recommend it to anybody who is interested in diving deeper into increasing diversity in our profession, because it specifically addresses the issues that women of color face. We have higher rates of attrition and continue to be underrepresented, where we only have 2% of equity partners in large law firms are women. And so there are certainly still opportunities for improvement and for improving our representation and enabling women of color to have long, thriving careers in the legal profession.
And Ruby, I do have those numbers, those metrics that you asked about. So just so that we can know or to get a better sense, I actually overestimated the percentages, but we have regular members in the state of Alabama. We have 18,580 members of the Alabama State Bar. Of that number, 16,829 or 90.6% are Caucasian. 1,400 or 7.5% are African American, and 351 or 1.9% identify as other. In terms of the male to female ratio, out of 18,580 members of the Alabama State Bar, 12,295 or 66.2% are male, and 6,285 or 33.6% are female. So we're doing a little bit better on our male to female ratio with a 60-30% split, but our numbers for African Americans, and that's just all, not women, that didn't break it down into women and men, but we are 7.5% of the membership of the Alabama State Bar. So it'd be interesting to see over time, maybe 5 years, we can come back, or maybe we can get some information and see how that number has trended upwards, maybe over the past 20 years since I joined the bar, and where we are going. I do think that there are more people of color entering the profession. And I know we'll get to that later on, but you know, how many of those people are staying in the state and that we're able to retain here.
Thank you for that. That was great. And I want to, well, I would have dropped it in the chat box, but I'm not that quick. But Left Out and Left Behind was the title of that article in the ABA Journal. So if anyone's interested in checking it out, again, that title was Left Out and Left Behind. Okay, so when I think about the spectrum of initiatives around diversity and inclusion and increasing representation, I think about 5 factors generally: recruiting, developing, mentoring, promoting, and of course, retaining that talent. So let's take some time and kind of talk through each of those factors. So maybe you all can share how you're doing it at your firms, and also share what are some of the obstacles that kind of get in the way of your ability to meet those factors. So why don't we start with talking about the recruitment of diverse talent? Stephanie?
Sure. So we have 2 primary ways that we recruit here at the firm. One is through our summer recruiting program, and then we also recruit lateral hires. And so each year we interview candidates on campus and have in what we call on-campus OCI, or on-campus interviews. You're nodding, probably many of us probably went through that process. And then we bring candidates into the office. We are increasing our visibility this year, for example. Doing something that we haven't done in the past is attending some minority job fairs. And so the Southeastern Minority Job Fair, for instance, as I mentioned, our firm, along with other firms, are realizing the urgency and the importance of increasing diversity in our ranks. And so that's one way that we're looking to increase diversity in our summer recruiting program. Through lateral hiring, we've recently approved and rolled out a lateral hiring policy where for every lateral associate hire, 1/3 of the candidates who were interviewed for each of those positions has to be a minority. And that is a policy that our practice group leaders and our firm are committed to. And we're already seeing it pay dividends just by increasing the level of exposure and opportunities that people have to be interviewed for the positions. We're seeing increased numbers in our hiring of lateral associates. And so I think that the recruiting on the front is certainly an important aspect of the spectrum of increasing our diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And so you mentioned the urgency around, increasing numbers and being intentional about that work. Do you all get pressure from your clients to improve your diversity numbers, or do you get any input? I know for Southern, we're definitely looking at our law firms and their diversity numbers. So I'm curious if Maynard is experiencing some of that sort of encouragement to consider diversity and to be intentional about that.
Absolutely. And I welcome it and encourage it and appreciate it. We have clients, I call it the carrot and the stick approach. We have some clients that reward the firm with that work. They don't want you to come and pitch for the work if you're not coming with a diverse client team. Mm-hmm. We have other clients that will decrease bills if they don't see diverse lawyers doing substantive work on their files. And so I appreciate that because it strongly encourages / requires the firm to put these issues at the forefront of the things that we're addressing.
That's awesome. I'm putting a pin in substantive work. We'll come back to that point. But Janine, if you don't mind jumping in, kind of talk about recruitment and maybe talk from your previous experience as well as current.
Right. So previously, I echo the things that Stephanie said, just the on-campus interviews. You get a lot of private referrals or personal referrals. Someone has a family member or niece or nephew who's gone to law school. I guess I'll kind of go into the second point, which is the development. So recruiting, you have, of course, when someone comes out of law school, they want a job, right? And so a lot of times the recruitment piece is there. There may be some hesitation if you're not from Birmingham about coming to Birmingham, because it still has a certain stigma attached to it. And when I was younger, I heard that Birmingham didn't have a great social scene, but it was a great place to raise a family. So I'm not sure if that's still relevant or not, but in terms of the recruitment, I do think that, just going to the law schools, being involved with the minority bar associations or reaching out to those bar associations so that you can get the pool of minority candidates as part of your interview process is something you can do to recruit. And the develop piece, I think that even if you get folks to come to your firm, it's important to remember to develop them once they get there, especially if they haven't gone through this summer program. So the summer program is an introduction, of course, to the firm's culture, and to the folks that these young lawyers would likely be working with. So whether it's a person right out of law school or a lateral, it's important to know who you're going to be working with and making sure that those personalities gel. And, firm culture is important. I think it can be a double-edged sword. I think that when people don't want to increase their diversity, they can use firm culture as one of those terms to say, oh, well, I'm not sure if they fit into our culture. But if you want to increase your numbers, if you want to diversify the mix of attorneys at your firm or in your place of business, then you have to be willing to open up your culture and maybe even change your culture. If everyone looks alike, then everyone may have the same beliefs and they may act the same or look the same. But in terms of changing the culture and wanting to change the mix up or makeup of your legal team, you have to be willing to change that culture as well.
That was really good.
My summer recruiting job was the best job. Summer clerking job was the best gig I ever had.
Oh yeah, you can't beat free spa day and all these restaurants you've never been to, but that's not the real world. So
They didn't tell me that.
But I'm notorious for letting summer clerks know, and even laterals know, that this is a part of the recruiting process. This is not what it's like to practice law. And I think sometimes, a lot of women of color are the first in their family to practice law. So they have not seen what it's like for an attorney to practice. They don't know about the long hours. They don't know about the weekends and holidays and all of the time that you put into practicing law. So I say notorious because I may have driven some folks away, but what I wanted folks to understand is I wanted them to know what they were walking into, and I wanted them to be prepared. I didn't want them to think that every Friday we went to spa day and every Friday we had golf all day. No, the attorneys that are participating in recruiting are here on the weekend because they're participating in trying to recruit you and make sure you have a good time. Or after we leave Taco Tuesday, we're going back to the office. So that's what the practice of law is really like. The law is a jealous mistress. I know I learned that early on in law school, and it's continued to be true whether I'm in a big firm setting, a corporate setting, or even in a solo small firm setting. I mean, there are times when we have plans and those plans are pushed to the side because somebody files a motion at the last minute or you have an emergency hearing. Mm-hmm. So I think that's just part of the practice. And so as we're recruiting and developing young lawyers, I think it's important to let them know what the practice of law really entails, what this job really entails. And if they're going to be expected to work 6 days a week and to answer the phone at 4 a.m, you need to let folks know that so that they can mentally prepare more than anything and decide if they're willing to make those type of sacrifices.
I agree with that. I think that, Ruby, on the list of factors, Janine's hit the nail on the head. I think that development and mentoring are two of the most important factors on that list, particularly for diverse attorneys in terms of development and providing diverse attorneys with quality, desirable work assignments and providing them with opportunities to get in front of clients and to develop client relationships. Because the diverse attorneys have ambition, have drive, have the tools in the toolbox, but oftentimes, as you'll read in this article that I referenced earlier and other articles, feel unseen or unsupported. And so that developmental aspect is so key. I think that leaders, you've mentioned a couple of times being intentional. Leaders in organizations and in law firms have to be intentional about providing those developmental opportunities. And so when firms are thinking about who's going to go on this pitch for this work for a client, they've got to be intentional about including, lawyers, and then intentional about including them in the meaningful work, intentional about including them on the trial teams. And I think as diverse lawyers, we also have to be intentional about seeking out those opportunities. Yes. We have to take the reins of our careers. There are in our firm, for example, there's a conflicts check that comes out every afternoon. So every new case that's coming into the firm, every lawyer sees it to see whether there's any conflicts. I've encouraged lawyers all the time, if you see some case or client that you want to get on, reach out to that lawyer and say, hey, I see you've got this work coming in that looks really interesting. I'd love to work with you on that. We are also responsible. We have some responsibility in our development, and so seeking out those opportunities. And then in terms of mentoring, one of the things that was highlighted in this article was the benefit of shared experiences and how oftentimes we are the only one in our organizations or one of few. And there's such huge benefits in being able to have discussions around shared experiences, because oftentimes we believe that we're the only one who's ever been in this situation or who's made this mistake or who's had to engage in this conversation. So I think that those things underscore the importance of having, those developmental and those mentoring opportunities.
Absolutely. I think, for me, I started out with the company in non-traditional roles, and the bulk of my career has been in non-traditional roles. But one thing I've learned, we all work hard. We all strive to do a good job at our work. But I've also learned that it's not enough just to be a hard worker. It's not enough to be a strong performer. It really matters what work you're doing, So to your point about it being substantive and it being intentional in terms of developing young talent, I do think that that's been a major factor and something that I've realized and have worked towards making sure that I hold, my leadership accountable for giving me those meaningful assignments and assignments that are going to stretch me and grow my skills. So that was good. You mentioned mistakes. Can you all talk a little bit about mistakes? I think sometimes diverse talent make mistakes and maybe it's held over their head for years. It's almost like you cannot overcome those mistakes. Can you all talk about maybe how you've seen that or if you've experienced that in your careers?
So I guess I can talk about that, and I see a question. So one of the things that we had talked about as we prepared for this Q&A that I do want to go back to is mentorship versus sponsorship. And, in terms of mentoring, initially, whenever we had an African-American summer associate, I was put with that person. And I went to the recruiting person. I said, no, do not give me the African-American summer clerk because I'm going to mentor to them naturally. They are going to seek me out. It never fails. They're going to walk around. They are going to sneak away at lunch or come in early. They're going to find me and we're going to have a mentorship, whether it's official or not. Give me someone who doesn't look like me because then there's an opportunity for me to learn from them and for them to learn from me. Likewise, for me, when I was in-house as well as at the firm, I always sought out older white males because that's someone that wasn't part of my community, that wasn't someone that I had access to. I wasn't going to run into this individual at church, or he's probably wasn't going to be my neighbor, not at that time. So I wanted to get to know someone who didn't look like me, but who had been in the practice of law for 30 years, 35 years, been successful. Maybe he's a 4th generation lawyer. I want to know the tools of the trade. I want to know what it is that you're talking to the young white male associate with over golf, over lunch, at church on Saturday, that I don't get a chance to hear because I'm not a part of your community. And so I was intentional, as Stephanie talked about seeking out people that did not look like me because I wanted to know what they knew. And I think through just human development, now these people also have to be willing to mentor to you. So I do think that as we're having this discussion, and I can see some of the people who are on the call, and it's great, we've got a very diverse group of people that are participating in the CLE this morning. And so to everyone on the CLE, we've all got to be willing to go outside of our comfort zone and get to know people that don't look like us and work with people and genuinely take an interest in folks. I mean, one time I was assigned to a summer associate and she was really big into sports. And she said, well, do you play any sports? And I said, no. And she was like, well, why would they assign me to you? And she asked to be reassigned. And I was sharing this with another lawyer, an older lawyer, African-American male. And he said, well, how about the fact that y'all are human beings? How about the fact that you've been at this firm for 10 years and you've been successful? That's what the young lady should have been getting from our mentorship, that I have found a way to thrive and be successful here. And that's what you want to focus on. You're a first-year associate. You want to focus on making good grades in law school, being successful, passing the bar, and then trying to secure employment. But her focus was on something else. And that's fine. That was a missed opportunity. But we have to be willing to go outside of our comfort zone. We have to be willing to find mentors. And I think through finding mentors, then you can find the sponsorship. And the way I define sponsorship is when you have someone who is willing to advocate for you when you're not in the room. When your name is being tossed around, when you're not in the room, and in a positive way. When someone is saying, well, hey, what about Janine? I think she'd be great on this case. Hey, why don't we take Janine on this client visit? Not because we need a Black person, not because the client says you need to bring a Black person. not because the plaintiff is a Black person and we're the defense firm and we need a Black lawyer, but because I'm the best person. I invoke confidence in clients. I am going to get the job done, and we need to take her. She needs to be on the team. When you can find somebody that is advocating for you when you're not in the room, that is the definition of a sponsor. And without me having had sponsors, I never would have become a partner at Performance. So I know that I had sponsors, I had mentors, but then those mentors turned into sponsors. And so for people that aren't in a big firm setting, find mentors and find sponsors that maybe practice the same type of law that you practice. Now I'm in a completely different setting. I'm in a solo small firm setting. And I've had to reach out to lawyers that I may have seen in the past and never have said anything but, hey, how are you doing? But now I'm in a different setting. So I've had to make some cold calls and reintroduce myself. Also, humble yourself. You know, at every point in our career, we're going to have some wins and some losses. And I think the question was, how do you handle mistakes? You handle a mistake by first admitting you made a mistake. You try to learn from the mistake, and then you move on. You don't stay in the mistake. You don't let the mistake keep you down. You say, well, hey, that wasn't the right thing. How could I have done that better? And you move on, because everyone is going to make mistakes. But as long as we're continuing to live, we have breath in our bodies, then we have another opportunity to get it right.
That was great. So we do have a couple questions coming through the chat, and I know we have several left on our notes, but time is going by pretty fast. I want to take a minute, though, to ask the questions that have been posted in the chat. One is, please discuss the difference between inclusion and belonging.
So I'll take a stab at that. There is a diversity and inclusion trainer, Vernee Myers, I believe is her name, and she has a quote that says, diversity is being invited to the dance. Inclusion is being invited to dance. And I think that that is so telling and so important in all environments. It's not enough to recruit diverse talent and not develop that talent and not invite that talent to the table for the important discussions and decisions, to not provide that talent with the opportunities that we've discussed. So I think that that is what inclusion means. That inclusion means, again, not just being invited to the party, but being invited to participate at the party. Janine mentioned earlier about how the culture of a place is so important. And I couldn't agree more. I think that one of the ways that our firm is looking to increase a sense of belonging is through recognition of Heritage Months, for example. We have, even in the midst of COVID, hosted multiple conversations around diversity and inclusion issues as it relates specifically to Heritage Months. We are starting a book club to talk about issues that are specifically related to race. And so I think that to the extent that we can have those tough conversations in the workplace and through celebrating Heritage Month, communicating to people, I see you and I appreciate you and you are valued here, that those things help to create those environments of inclusion and belonging.
Awesome. Janine?
Yeah, and we have another question here, and it says, do you have ideas about how white lawyers, and more specifically white women lawyers, can be better allies if they are not in a firm where they can influence hiring or inclusion? And I guess my answer to that would be, you know, if you know of a superstar lawyer and they are a diverse candidate, let your friends know. You may be in-house now, but you came from a firm, or you may be a stay-at-home mom now, but you're married to a lawyer who's in a firm. I think the role here is to, you know, increase our network. We talk about cultural diversity. Stephanie just said that they are starting a book club, and one of the things that's come up during the quarantine is the hair issue, right? And so I see that Stephanie has her hair in braids, and if you saw me on any Zoom calls or saw me around town, I had my hair in braids for most of quarantine. And I kind of wondered about it, but the reality was I couldn't get to my stylist, okay? And so I tried doing it myself, and that was a nightmare. So I went to braids, and I wore them in what I considered a professional manner. I appeared on several Zoom hearings in front of judges, and people complimented me on them. But is there a stigma associated with our hair? I mean, if we change our hair, why is that always an issue? Why is that a comment? Every time I change my hair, it's commented on. And I think that one of the things we can do is just to get to know someone that doesn't look like us. So for white women, get a Black friend, go invite her to lunch. Let's talk about things that women talk about, because we all have commonalities. I didn't know that all white women didn't have blonde hair at one point in time in my life. I didn't know. And then I found out that most people have curly hair, so they blow dry. So look, we all have differences, but we all have some commonalities. And I think that in terms of bridging the gap and bringing down the walls is part of just getting to know people, trying to know them as an individual, more so than looking at the color of their skin. I think that's how you build relationships. I think that's how you're able to create advocates for you in places where you're not, because you're getting to know the person, and you'll find something that you like about everybody. And that's a way that you can, I guess, promote the person from outside of your own organization. If you know of a diverse can, let's face it, a recommendation goes a long way, and a lot of times it's even better than a resume. If you got a resume, Stephanie, but you don't know the person, but if I called or if Ruby calls and says, you need to hire this person, they're dynamic, I know them, plus they have the qualifications, then that's probably going to be head and shoulders above just somebody you just see on a piece of paper.
Yeah. Thank you. That was great for both of those questions. And please continue to post. We've got about 10 minutes left in this session. And I wanted to make one comment about the inclusion versus belonging question. I can't remember if it was me or Woodman, but I was in a diversity talk, and the comment was made that, and we hear that phrase, inclusion is being invited to dance. But he took it a step further, and I think it was me or Woodman, but whoever the speaker was, they said that it's not just being invited to dance, but it's being invited to the planning committees. It's being invited to give input on the playlist. I want to feel my presence in the atmosphere as well. And I think, when we talk about culture, it's about creating a culture that's inviting to everyone and is representative of everyone. And that requires work on all of our parts. So I think we're doing good about creating environments that are diverse and inclusive, but that belonging piece is going to require a lot of work, because I think it requires, self-assessments of your own biases and, your own tolerance levels. And I think that we've got to just be intentional about making sure we chip away at things that aren't promoting that inclusive culture and environment that's not welcoming. Janine mentioned the hair. That's a huge topic, especially in corporate environments. I can't tell you how many times I've changed my hair and it's like, oh, wait a minute. Is that all of your hair? You get the random questions every time. And it's sort of like, it's worth a conversation. So let's have those conversations. And the question about being allies, speak up. Speak up when you see things that are not correct. And this goes for all minorities and all, spectrums and topics around diversity and inclusion. Speak up. Speak up. So I want to thank you all for providing those questions in the comments. And there are a couple more that I think we want to hit on before we have to wrap up this session. And one is around the burnout and fatigue. I know that, we work hard in these environments and we put in all this, what feels like extra work to just kind of get noticed, to get ahead, aside from just the day-to-day job. Can you tell us how you can avoid that burnout and that fatigue and that just feeling of wanting to throw in the towel? Stephanie or Janine?
Sure, I'll start. I'll say the ABA article does a good job of addressing the unique issues that we as women of color face and having extended family responsibilities. We're less likely to use sitters for job care. We're less likely to hire people to help take care of our household responsibilities. And like many of you on this Zoom, I am a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a daughter, I'm a niece, I'm a cousin, I'm a friend, I'm a church member, I'm a neighbor, and I'm a lawyer. And all of those roles are important to me. And all of those roles tug at my time and my energy, right? And there's some days when I'm better in some of those roles than I am in others. And at various points in my career, and I tell this to associates all the time, I've had to reevaluate and recalibrate expectations. There were points very early in my career when I was up early, up late, like gunning it. And then I had a kid. And so I had to reevaluate and recalibrate. And for me, that meant getting up early, working more in the morning times before I came into work, so that I could do the daycare dash in the afternoons. And just when I thought I had it figured out, I had another kid. And so there's this constant reevaluating and recalibrating what your expectations are, what your career trajectory is. I now have had the opportunity to split my time between practice and the talent officer role. And for me, that's given me the opportunity to use my L&E background, still at the same firm, still practicing, but it gives me a renewed energy in the work that I'm doing. And so I think that particularly as diverse lawyers, we have to seek out those opportunities, speak up, be planful. What is it that you want your career trajectory to look like? And be planful in those things, and don't be afraid to reevaluate and recalibrate along the way.
Yeah,
Janine?
I would definitely say that it's important to be kind to yourself. I have been hearing that more and more lately. Millennials have it right, not on a lot of stuff, but they have it right in terms of they're going to take time for themselves. If they got a 5 o'clock cycle class, they're going to it, and they'll get back online at 9 o'clock. And I remember the first time I saw the associate I was working with leave, and I said, "Where are you going?" They said, "I'm going to my cycle class." And I was like, wow. I mean, I was jealous because I needed to go there too. But even the fact that they would just have the balls to walk out while I was still there. And when I started practicing law, it was definitely in the culture where you got there before the partner you were working with, and you did not leave until after that partner left. And I would remember coming in at 6 a.m. because I had the latest doctor's appointment. So it was like a 4 o'clock doctor's appointment. And I was terrified to leave at 4 to go to that doctor's appointment, but knowing I had been there since 6, I hadn't taken lunch because I didn't want anyone to think that I was lazy or that I was, cutting out early. But then I began to see people get sick, have strokes, die off. And then I learned the work is going to be there. Before someone can be buried, they've already reassigned that case. So I would just say, be kind to yourself. If you need to take a break, take a break. I didn't take in 13 years of practicing in big firm. I took 2 vacations, and one of them was my honeymoon. I mean, maybe that's why my marriage was short-lived. But on my honeymoon, every day I had a conference call with my secretary. She went through my mail. I told her what messages to return because at that time I was a partner and I had to keep up on my business. And that's what I thought. I didn't think that I could just take off to enjoy being married and being away. So I would definitely say take some time for yourself, whether that's a long weekend or if you have more time, take it, because you'll get burnt out real quick and you might wake up one day and life has passed you by. And I think a lot of older attorneys, and I'm a middle-aged attorney now, so I'm saying that to my younger counterparts, but even to women who are my age or older, the work will be there. Do a good job, work hard while you're there, but when you step away, take that time and be kind to yourself.
That was excellent. Thank you, Janine. We've got one more question that came in, and I think we can tie this into the last question since we only have 3 minutes left. What makes you feel better supported as a minority lawyer in your offices? And also, what do we need to do to continue to move the needle?
I'll start. I'll say for me, what has made me feel better supported is getting good opportunities out the gate. When I started practicing in September of 2007, October of 2007, I was on a trial team. My part was to carry the boxes, but I did my part well. I would say I've had phenomenal mentors and sponsors, and some of them on their call. I see Katie Loggins, who is now a client. She was here and was one of my initial early mentors here at the firm, made with Porters on the Zoom, and was and still is one of my mentors, sponsors, friends, supporter, and those things are so key and so important. To the question about what allies can do, what we can do, what we need to do to continue to move the needle forward, I would say these discussions are good, but we've all got to do something. Look for opportunities to serve as a mentor or a sponsor. Look for opportunities to provide training and development, particularly to minorities in your organization. We are not going to turn it down. Foster an environment where that celebrates diversity, that recognizes the differences as something that is positive, either through hosting events or just providing those opportunities for discussion. At the end of the day, we all want our employees to feel valued and important, because they are. And when you have an opportunity to shape what a team looks like, ensure that it's diverse, and recognize the contributions of diverse lawyers. I would say I have a great appreciation for judges and mediators and clients who look at the youngest lawyer in the room, because they know that that lawyer is the one who's put the binders together and done the research, and ask them what they think about things. And so when you're in that role and have that opportunity, do that. Give that diverse lawyer the opportunity to speak up. And I would say, last two things: write the vision, make it plain. If you are in a leadership position, what is the goal and the vision for your organization? And as individuals, like, what is your goal for your career trajectory? And seek out the opportunities and the mentors and the sponsors to help you get there. And then the last thing I'll say, here recently, I've been seeing a lot of people wearing t-shirts that say, I am my ancestors' wildest dreams. Don't ever forget that. We are standing on some broad shoulders, and while we've come a long way, we've got a long way to go. But when I look in the mirror, I see my ancestors' wildest dreams. And so I just encourage all of you to always remember that, because we can do this work and we're making valuable contributions to this profession.
Awesome. Janine, you want to take us out?
Yeah, I'm gonna, we didn't talk about this, but I want to talk about it. Angry Black women, how to avoid it. I don't know, but I am working hard at it. And when we talk about mistakes, I do think a woman said this to me on another Zoom call that I was on, and it was very helpful. It was something I hadn't thought about. She said, sometimes we bring our experiences to the table. We bring our experiences to the meeting. And there's a lot going on right now. If you turn on your television, we heard about what's going on in Wisconsin. We heard about the arrest of the 16-year-old that then shot people, and who wasn't captured in the street, was actually arrested later at home. And there are a lot of people hurting. And so sometimes I think that we have to be cognizant of how we're feeling on the inside, and sometimes make sure that that is not conveyed on the outside. I'm often told, I don't have to ask you what you think because you wear it on your face. So I'm trying to do a better job of my facial expressions, and not letting something that may be affecting me personally that has nothing to do with the task at hand or with the person that I'm meeting with lead or come across in the room. I want to make sure that I'm presenting my authentic self, and I try to be true to who I am, but also every person, Caucasian person is not a bad person. Every African-American person is not a bad person. And so I do think that we have to be willing to, as Ruby said, open our eyes, open what we are used to seeing, and expand our knowledge base, expand our understanding of one another, so that we can continue to move the needle forward. If we are staying in the communities and in situations that are comfortable and that we're used to, then we're never going to get anywhere. So on both sides of the table, women, men of color, majority firms, Caucasian men and women, we all have to be willing to see something different in another person, see the similarities, see the difference, and try to understand those things so that we can work together and move forward. But just as Black women, I know we're tired, we're angry, we've often been overlooked or mistreated, but we've got to persevere. Those ancestors didn't get to where they were because they gave up. We didn't get some of the freedoms we have today that we see being taken away, or at least trying to be taken away, because we had folks that gave up. You know, when they put the dogs on us, we walked forward anyway. And so when you are closed out of a room, when you are closed out of a firm, when you do the research, but you're not allowed to go to court, or you're not allowed to interface with the client, keep pushing, keep persevering. Someone will see your drive, someone will recognize your talent, and you will be rewarded. And then if you can't be rewarded in that setting, go to another setting where you can receive your award and where people do appreciate you. And so that would be my closing remarks, is just, you know, keep the faith, keep persevering, and keep moving forward.
Awesome. All right. So I guess my last remark would be, let's just get comfortable being uncomfortable. Chris, do you have anything else that you want to add to close us out?
I see that he just added in the chat box for everyone to be sure to use the link in the confirmation email to give feedback and to attest that you virtually attended.
Okay. Well, that's probably a final thought. Thank you all for joining us today. I hope that you gained something from this discussion. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ruby. Thank you,
Thank you,
Stephanie.
Janine.
Thanks, John.
Thanks.